Well, thank you all so much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here. As AI professionals, we create knowledge. That's what we do. And yet, I think sometimes we don't take a hard enough look at what is knowledge fundamentally. So today I'm going to teach a little bit of epistemology and see if we can talk a little bit about the fundamental nature of knowledge and how that can help us to do our jobs better as knowledge engineers. So, uh, is human activity changing the climate? How do you know? Uh, I walked around my office building back when everyone was working in the office building a few years ago and asked everyone this question, and these are the answers I've got. Someone said, "Oh, I've read abstracts of a few scientific studies and heard reports on the science from news sources I trust." Someone said, "I saw Al Gore's movie." Intriguingly, one person said, "I took a trip to Alaska recently. We had to walk 2 hours to get to the glacier. They told me that just a few years ago, the glacier was right there. You didn't have to walk to get to it at all." So the to decide what to believe, people rely on sources that they trust. Uh, so what does it mean to know something? What is knowledge? The Knowledge is formally defined as justified true belief. So I'm going to first unpack what it means for a belief to be justified and then what it means for something to be true. Uh, There's an old American game show where there are three prizes behind curtains. And behind one of them is a car, and behind another one is a chicken, or something else less valuable than a car. And if you were to say, "I just know the car is behind door number 3," if you pick the right door, you get the car. Uh, Even if the car is behind door number 3, that belief would not be justified if it was just a lucky guess. So there are two approaches to justification. How do we know when a belief is justified? The first approach is called evidentialism, which argues that all beliefs should be supported by evidence. And beliefs are derived from a set of basic beliefs. Basic beliefs are things you learn from reliable senses and spontaneously form beliefs if they're a proper response to experience. Non-basic beliefs are derived from basic ones. So the question comes up, how useful is this? If you had to, for example, to decide whether it's worth your time to, or worth your money to buy a more fuel-efficient car, do you really believe that human activity is changing the climate? Do you really have the time to build up evidence for that all the way down to basic beliefs? Not if you're not a climate scientist. And this is part of the problem with the internet today, that we all don't know when to believe things. The second approach is more useful, and it's called reliabilism. Reliabilism says that a belief is reliable if it's the result of a reliable cognitive process. A reliable process is one that generally leads to correct outcomes. And I love this example. This is from Richard Feldman. Compare a novice bird watcher and an expert walking together in the woods, seeking out the rare pink-spotted flycatcher. A bird flies by, and each person spontaneously forms the belief that there is a pink-spotted flycatcher there. The expert knows this to be true, but the novice is jumping to a conclusion out of excitement. The expert has a well-founded belief, but the novice does not. A belief is reliable if it's the result of a reliable cognitive process. A reliable process is one that generally leads to correct outcomes, and this is arguably more useful. So in a reliabilism framework, you could say the New York Times is generally a reliable source. For many people, we would accept, for example, the New York Times as a reliable source. If you believe that it's a reliable source, then you're justified in believing it in absence of information to the contrary. So, okay, we've talked about what it means for something to be reliable. The second question we need to address is, what does it mean for something to be true? We approach the world through our senses, and all our representations of the world are approximations. I was a physics major as an undergrad, and initially I thought we're learning approximate solutions to physics problems because we're just baby physicists. When I'm a grown-up physicist, I'll learn the real solution. And of course, I quickly learned that no, wait, all solutions are approximations. All representations are approximations. The writer Borges writes that the only perfect map of the territory is itself. The universe is a perfect model of the world, and everything else is an approximation to some degree. So, okay, is this a chair? Is that a picture of a chair? There are different theories about the nature of reality. An objectivist approach says the world exists and is knowable through our senses. A subjective approach says, no, I don't really know anything. How do I know I'm not dreaming? How do I know that's really a picture of a chair? So there's a spectrum of approaches from objectivist to subjectivist. The philosopher Hilary Putnam has a pragmatic compromise that I like, and here's what Putnam says. Putnam says, look, okay, it's true that we are trapped within our senses, and I can't really know that you're there. I can't really know anything. But my completely subjective senses and your completely subjective senses all agree that's a picture of a chair. Why do we agree? Why do we have this insanely high correlation between our senses? And the answer is because the chair exists. So in the internal realist compromise, we say that the world exists, but is only knowable through our subjective senses. But the social consensus among different sets of subjective perceptions helps us to figure out what is real. So, okay. Now we have a notion of what it means for something to be true. How do we agree what's true? That process is fundamentally social. Latour and Woolgar wrote about how in science, the process of something being accepted as a scientific fact is one of the citation dropping out. So for instance, we might start by saying, Millikan and Fletcher claim that the charge on the electron is unitary, and here's my citation. As this becomes more commonly accepted, we might say, since the charge on the electron is unitary, cite Millikan and Fletcher. And then over time, we can just say the charge on the electron is unitary, and we don't even need to have a citation anymore. It's just true. What did I mean when I said it's just true? What I meant was the community has accepted it as a scientific fact. The more people believe something, the more we can agree it's true. Now, this is the social construction of knowledge. Socially constructed knowledge is sometimes wrong. It's a synthesis of virtue ethics and epistemology, and it suggests that dealing with knowledge appropriately is a lifelong journey. And to do so, we need to embody epistemic virtues. So to really explain virtue epistemology, I first have to explain virtue ethics. This is a theory that traces itself back to Aristotle, and it asks you to ask yourself, what kind of a person do you want to be? Embodying your virtues helps you to achieve the good life, to achieve, in Greek, eudaimonia, which means the kind of happiness that is worth having. So, for example, a lot of ethical theories will give you an answer to an ethical dilemma. What do I do? Virtue ethics is different in that it says, what kind of person do I want to be? So let's say we decide that we want to be an honest person. if you were faced with a difficult decision, you would ask yourself, what would an honest person do in this situation? Uh, the and So virtue epistemology suggests that finding truth is a lifelong quest. And if you decide you want to be someone who manages knowledge in a responsible fashion, you seek to embody the epistemic virtues. And here's different philosophers have different lists of epistemic virtues. Here's one list from Heersmink. In this framework, not achieving knowledge is an achievement. Finding knowledge is an achievement you should be proud of, and it's a collaborative achievement, not an individual achievement. This is from John Greco. Playing in a soccer game, Ted receives a brilliant, almost impossible pass. With the defense out of position and goalie lying prostrate on the ground, Ted kicks the ball into the net for an easy goal. The point, Greco is drawing an analogy between our soccer goal and knowledge. When you receive information from someone else, it's like receiving that pass from the striker that gives you the easy goal. Someone else is setting you up for success. But that raises the question, when are you justified in believing information that someone gives you? In philosophy, this is the problem of testimony. Much of what's happening on the internet right now, what is broken about the internet right now, is problems of testimony. How do I know when to believe information that was passed to me? We saw before that knowledge is socially constructed. The more something has been carefully reviewed, the more credible it is. And the mechanism for social construction of knowledge in science is peer review. So here's how peer review works. 3 experts read the work. They are all fully knowledgeable about all aspects of the content. If there's any subject matter they are not knowledgeable about, they learn it. And if there are references cited in the thing they're reviewing that they haven't read, they make sure to read them all carefully and analyze them. That's how it works, right? Well, okay, maybe not. It's important not to idolize peer review. Think about what actually happens when a paper gets reviewed. The more our work gets interdisciplinary, the higher the chance that someone reviewing it is going to really not fully know all the content. And hopefully they'll tell the editor that, but maybe not. The more carefully reviewed something is, the more credible it is. So with all that, I return to my framing question: should you believe Wikipedia? And to answer that, we have to ask the question, how is the content of Wikipedia reviewed? Let's take a look at a specific Wikipedia page. I chose as my example the Wikipedia page of U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts. The page was created in May 2005 and had just 182 words. At the time, he was a Superior Court judge. And there were only 9 edits through July 19th when he was nominated for the Supreme Court. Here's what the page looked like. Just a few sentences, where he got his degree, what his job is. That's all. So on the day he was nominated, there were 31 edits that day and 1,200 edits by the end of the month. It's currently nearly 7,000 words long, and it covers absolutely every aspect of this man's life. It's amazing. When someone is elevated from a position of relative obscurity to prominence, like a new U.S. Supreme Court judge, like a pope, go ahead and watch the changes to their Wikipedia page live. It's kind of astonishing to watch. Every Wikipedia page has a history tab, and you can go all the way back and see all the edits of that page. So you can see this process happening. And this page for John Roberts now, for example, has a concordance of all of his past opinions and what he said on different issues. and all of his current work. It's really kind of amazing. So, okay, now let's talk about how a high-quality peer-reviewed journal article is edited. Three expert reviewers read it, and then it's relatively fixed. For a popular Wikipedia page, thousands of people edit it with a range of different expertise. Vandalism is typically reviewed in seconds, and it's updated continuously. That journal article is published and then set in stone, whereas the Wikipedia page continues to be edited for a popular page. But let's talk about what happens with a less popular page. This is the Wikipedia page for the Massachusetts State House. It says that the model for Columbia Queen of the Ocean is Norma Brodney Cohen. The model for the War Mothers on the other end of the hall was Sarah Brodney Cohen. The young man on one knee in the front of the picture is Fred Cohen. If you chase the citations for this carefully backwards, you'll find that there's support for some of those statements in published references and others not so much. I promise it's true. It's there because I put it there. And Norma was my grandmother. Sarah was my great-grandmother. At the time that I added this content to Wikipedia, you could get away with putting some content on Wikipedia that didn't have references. More recently, I think it's harder to do, which is good. I promise it's true. Please don't remove it. So why was this unsupported content allowed to stay on Wikipedia? And the answer is because no one except my mother cares about the murals in the Massachusetts State House or the architecture of the Massachusetts State House. Who cares? Whatever. It's a Massachusetts State House. It's a building. Nobody cares about the Massachusetts State House. So the point is that if you're looking at a U.S. Supreme Court justice, lots of people care, and that page is highly reliable. If you're looking at an obscure page, who knows? So the answer to the question, should you believe Wikipedia, depends on the page. I will argue that a popular page is the most accurate form of information ever created in the history of humanity. A less popular page is much less reliable. This answer is complicated. No wonder that kids in middle schools get taught the wrong thing. The design of Wikipedia has features, what we would in HCI would call affordances, that support the social construction of knowledge. And there are a number of these, like revision history and talk pages, where every Wikipedia page has a page where you can talk with other editors about the content. There are wiki projects where a group of editors get together to work on a particular topic. Even the policy pages for Wikipedia, many people don't know this, are editable themselves. So you can go on Wikipedia and change the policy on neutral point of view. Now, if you do that without discussing it first with the other editors, you'll get reverted. Yeah, even the policy pages themselves are created by social consensus. An old joke says Wikipedia doesn't work in theory, it only works in practice. Maybe our theory needs to catch up with the practice a little bit. So I want to pop up a level and return to our core, most important question. In what ways is philosophy useful to AI? I believe we can better do our work as intelligent systems designers if we leverage our understanding of truth and knowledge in their design. So understanding that knowledge comes from social construction of knowledge, we can design systems which support the social construction of knowledge, such as opportunities to review content, visibility of the degree of review. It's way too hard to understand for a layperson that the John Roberts page is more reliable than the Massachusetts State House page. Support for consensus formation, ways for people to say, wait, are you sure? and to have a group of knowledgeable people reach a consensus on a topic. Second, again, one of the core problems we have with the internet today is the problem of testimony. And one thing we can do is to support the process of evaluating testimony, particularly provide metadata on the provenance of information. Where did this come from? If we all knew where this piece of information came from, we could make more intelligent choices about whether to believe it. And metadata on the credibility of sources. Some of that is available online. We need a whole lot more of it. It's a really interesting question to me to what extent the epistemic virtues themselves are useful. I think we could pick any one of these and think about whether we could design systems that create knowledge with a combination of automated and human effort. How can we work to maximize these epistemic virtues, like, for instance, open-mindedness? Can we design systems that help people to keep an open mind about issues? In my lab, we've been working on a project to think about how do we help people to have hard conversations across political difference. Generally, people just tune each other out if they don't agree. The dream of the internet as a public sphere suggests that there should be a forum where we all learn more by listening to each other. How can we design to make that possible? I hope you've been able to hear my talk through these technical difficulties, which I apologize for. My book, Should You Believe Wikipedia? Online Communities and the Construction of Knowledge, is coming out from Cambridge University Press in February. These are the chapters. And I hope you'll find that interesting. The talk I gave today is largely based on the content of the Should You Believe Wikipedia title chapter, chapter 3. And I want to say thank you to the Social Epistemology Network Facebook group who have helped me as a computer scientist to learn some philosophy, to my students, and to Lauren Cowles at Cambridge University Press, my book editor. And thank you all for listening.